I know that's one of your soapbox moments. I was giving you a minute.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to hold myself here.
Me too.
Squeeze.
Yeah.
You're listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, where HIPAA and humor collide to make learning fun. Your delightful hosts are Donna Grindle and David Sims. Relax. HIPAA help is on the way.
Welcome to episode 330 of the Help Me with HIPAA podcast. My name is David Sims of HIPAA Firm SPs, and joining me is Donna Grindle of Carden. Good morning, Donna.
Good morning, David.
How you is?
So, I am doing the responsible thing, David, and getting my scheduled colonoscopy check. And so that's happening today. So those of you who have had one before, you know how I'm doing today.
Yeah, that's
and
pretty crappy.
Yeah, but
Hold on, I got that.
There you go. But you know, I've lost folks to colon cancer at a young age, so I encourage anybody that hits their 50s or wherever it's officially recommended by your doctor to go do this. Just go do this because, yeah. So it's not fun. No, it's not. It's not. But
yeah, but you told me it was such a clean feeling.
You're feeling cleansed. You are very cleansed at the end. When it's over, cleansed.
Yeah, it probably feels a lot like a cleansing from a priest.
An exorcism. Yep, maybe.
Yeah.
Could be that.
Yeah.
But I highly recommend suffering through it because the alternative is really not worth it.
Yeah.
Here you go. That's how you do it.
Yep.
And that little box commercial, no. Well, I mean, I guess if you wanted to just check it off the list. But first of all, the thought of that whole thing, questionable. And I have learned that if that thing finds anything and then you have to do the real thing where they go spelunking into your phone. Insurance doesn't pay for the second one, it pays for the first one. So at any rate, get your diagnostics done, people. We've had enough jokes about it, but I'm sure David will find a moment to throw it in. And we've got to get this going, so hopefully I can get it done without stopping.
Yeah, we'll see.
Hopefully.
Yeah. All right. Well, I want to give a shout out to all the folks that were at the American Institute for Healthcare Compliance HIPAA camp this week in Vegas. I was there speaking. So nice group of folks and great conversations. It was some good stuff.
Yeah, and you educated people about Help Me with HIPAA.
I did. I mentioned the podcast and threw out some 405D resources, and we had some great conversations about security and Zumbas. No, Roombas, not Zumbas. Roombas.
Roombas.
I got Zoom and Roombas together because we talked about Zoom as well, and Roombas and TVs and IoT and all this, Amazon Alexa. It's kind of it was all 300 and something episodes crammed into
one afternoon, right?
Yeah. We talked about a lot of stuff that there was some jaw dropping and some head shaking, and a lot of people were like, "Ooh, we got to hurry up and get back, so we can fix some stuff."
It's like the lady at the boot camp that threw her pencil down and said, "I have been doing this wrong my entire career." Yeah.
Yep,
Karen, if you're listening. Anyway.
Yeah, that was fun. But speaking of conferences and things like that, we have the next HIPAA boot camp that we'll be putting on.
Virtual one?
Yeah. You know when it's going to be?
I do. I know you're so excited because I'm going to remember 2/22/22. My team is like, do you know when the camp is? I mean, are you sure this is? We made it this date so I could remember it. We got to work with what we got, people.
Yep. So February 22nd next year be the next virtual HIPAA boot camp.
Yep. By the time this comes out, you could probably go sign up for it.
Yep. Maybe so. Depends on Donna can get off the John long enough to get it done.
It's at the HIPAAbootcamp.com. Yeah. And there's a link to it on the podcast website, the helpmewithhipaa.com website.
All right. So what about the fall thing? Do you want to talk about
thing.
the fall thing?
The fall thing. Seriously, y'all. Seriously. We're doing a fall thing. We can't figure out a name. We need help with the name. David came up with a name, but then the acronym was TITS, so we can't use that name.
I thought it was good.
It sounded great. I figured phrasing, but
yeah, but people call us the double D's. I figured it was an appropriate acronym.
Oh well, yeah, we could go with that. So we're moving right along. We don't know the name of it yet, but it is going to be kind of taking the boot camp to the next level. Mm-hmm. This is probably 3.0. We've been calling it around here 2.0, but it's got to be 3.0 because our original one is nothing like what we do today. So right now it looks like the date will be September 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, like a half day. It's 3.5 days.
It's going to start on the 12th, and then when we're done, we're done.
When we're done, then you can go. But we're taking the concepts of our boot camp and turning it into a bigger conference environment. So it's a training conference, not your, this little thing and that little thing. There's going to be tracks that you can do, and we're going to bring in some of our vendor folks to help do some sessions, and it's awesome. So if you want to know about it, as soon as we have a name, we'll tell you.
Yeah, or if you can come up with one, let us know.
Please. We don't want to say HIPAA.
Aren't we planning on doing there's the kind of the what you need to do track, and then there's the how you need to do it track?
Yeah, everything has to cover what to do and how to do it.
Because I hate when you go to a conference and they give you all this stuff, and you're like, but nobody's telling me how to do any of this. They're just do this, do this, do this, do this. And then you leave out of there going, great, I didn't learn anything other than I need to learn how to do stuff.
Well, that's the plan, is that we have a focus on the what and the how in one of the topics. Now, granted, we can't get into finite details of the how, but we'll say, you go make sure that you have a system and you set up these things in it and you evaluate this. And so that is the intent. And also where you leave with actionable to-do list. And so there's a lot of things that we are putting in place. There's a lot of folks we're talking to. Everyone is excited about the concept because as usual, no one's done this before.
Yep. It'll be the first of its kind.
Yes, because it's going to include the Help Me with HIPAA folks, Cardin clients, Cardin Club, the HIPAA for MSPs. And speaking of that, you can learn more about the Cardin Club, your one-stop shop for all of your privacy and security officer needs at cardinhq.com/club.
Yeah. Come to the club.
And
come to party. Party in the club. And for you guys that are MSPs, then head on over to HIPAA4MSPs.com. That's spelled with one P. Yeah, but come over there and check us out. And
it's the 2.0, right?
Oh, yeah.
HIPAA for MSPs 2.0. We're doing a whole lot of new stuff there.
But it's not HIPAA for MSPs 2.0.com. So don't go there. But yeah, this one's great because we've merged a lot of things that you and I are doing together and put them together and created a lot of different and additional resources. And I've got some other things in there where we've pulled in Comply Assistant software. So now the MSPs get that software to use for themselves. We're working on getting an actual certification through the American Institute of Healthcare Compliance. So it'd be the only MSP HIPAA certification on the planet that is given and recognized by a healthcare accreditation firm.
Authority. Yeah.
Yep.
That.
Yep. So the only one. Kind of like Tigger.
And we're off.
All righty. So anything else
to
before
our
we jump
donors.
into this? Oh,
Thanks to our donors.
As always.
Please share us. When David had a room full of people that were HIPAA people that didn't know about us, clearly, because we don't do any marketing. We need your help. So please spread the word. It's
word of mouth marketing, and nobody used their mouth for at least 12 to 18 months during COVID. You didn't meet anybody new. You just like sit at home and work from home or whatever.
Yeah. Whatever, David. Yeah. Whatever.
Yeah. Or you couldn't hear anybody because they had the mask on, and you're like, "We're going to learn how to hit a podcast."
Yeah, there you go.
What?
Oh, please share us out so I don't put up with him for nothing. All right, so we're on all the social media and all that kind of stuff. Rate us, review us, subscribe. Subscriptions to the podcast really help. Mm-hmm. So thanks for the donors and all that stuff. Now we got a juicy set. We got a lot to cover here, and we've screwed around. So what's new? So
the title of today's episode is "Don't Forget About the SAG." I'm not talking about your britches or your breeches.
Although a breeches segment, we're talking about your breeches.
So the SAG, State Attorneys General, we don't talk about this much, but if you follow us I'm hoping we can get through all this in one episode, because I'm telling you what, this is, I think we might have mentioned this on a week or so ago. Maybe. I don't know. I've told so many people about it. But anyway, the State Attorneys General in New Jersey came after somebody. I guess you could say it that way. We're going to dive into it more, but we don't see this happening very often, and people don't think about it. And when you look at just the headline, it's like, oh, the State Attorney General, fined somebody for, privacy and security violations. But then when you dig into it, it's like, OMG.
I know. We've never seen one like this. This is crazy.
It's mind-boggling how much is in this one. So let's dive into it.
Because this is the entire episode is our segment for HIPAA. Yeah, there you go. Because wow. So for those that don't know, in HITECH, they added that state attorneys general could take on cases on behalf of their constituents under HIPAA. Mm-hmm. So that is there. It gave them some enforcement leverage, but we had a few there in the beginning, but it's really not used as often as we had thought it would be, which is, in this case, could change that.
Yeah.
Because of what's in here. Because this is a consent order from the New Jersey State Acting Attorney General, Andrew Bruck. And it comes out of the Division of Consumer Affairs, who also handles fraud, deceit, misrepresentation, professional misconduct, and they have a Consumer Fraud Act, right? So this case, they took their HIPAA hammer and their consumer protection hammer and brought them both down.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I've never seen one like this from OCR. So those of you who have been worried about OCR cases, I would worry about State Attorney General jumping on this.
Yeah.
If you're in New Jersey, heads up.
Yeah, I don't understand how states have yet to use this more often, and maybe they will after this. But all states are looking for revenue streams. And this seems to be a pretty lucrative one.
Well, in the state budgets, it's not really about that, it's $495,000, which to me and you would be like
Pocket change.
Yeah. My name is Consuela. And I love living in Mexico. I mean, that's huge, right? But when you look at how much it would impact the state budget, not a lot. So as always, the headlines of this case that came out, the big announcement, the clinic will pay $495,000 and implement additional data security measures. Ooh, that sounds serious. But what had happened was when I read the article, I'm like, oh, okay, this is going to be interesting. The article doesn't scratch the surface. Their PR release, well, I mean, you'd read the PR release, and I said, have you read the order yet? And what was the difference in your opinion?
Oh, I mean, it's night and day. It's, kind of like I alluded to in the opening, which is you read the headline or even the article, and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, that's not good. And then, but when you read the details, you're like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, that's what we said.
And it's in multiple ways. Like there's the OMG.
There's so many. Yeah.
Because of all the failures, and then there's the OMG because of how the failures happen, and there's the OMG because the
corrective action plan is insane.
The state's hanging on by their toes. I would use other body parts they're probably hanging on by. But goodness.
All right, so we do have the quotes from the announcement, the PR release by the Attorney General's office. And they sound very similar to what we're used to. You do the AG and I'll do the Consumer Affairs one. How's that?
Okay, sure. So this is from Andrew Bruck, Acting Attorney General, and he says, patients seeking fertility treatment rightly expect their healthcare provider to protect their privacy. Major cybersecurity lapses, like the ones leading up to this data breach, are unacceptable. Today's settlement sends the message, that such privacy lapses come with significant consequences. So can you say we making an example out of you?
Yeah. So yeah. And we're used to seeing that, but then we also get a zinger from the Consumer Affairs people. Inadequate data systems and protocols are every hacker's dream. Companies that fail to comply with basic security requirements are an easy target, and we will not stand by as they violate our laws and expose clients' sensitive information and make them vulnerable to identity theft. There's a lot they're saying there, but well, let's just get into the details and you'll understand why we're like,
Yeah. Again, if you're in New Jersey or doing business in New Jersey, you might want to listen up really close.
Yeah. You want to pay attention to this and then go read it for yourself and then review it again after you read it. Because I've gone through this like 3 or 4 times, and every time I find something where I'm like, oh, how did I miss that? Okay. So this is, as we mentioned, a fertility clinic. And they have offices in New Jersey, New York, and a consultative thing in Bermuda. That is important. That they have a consultative office, a consultation services they provide in Bermuda. Which to me sounds like, a great thing if you're a business owner, that you could like get some property in Bermuda and set up office down there so that you could go and work out of the Bermuda office whenever you wanted.
Well, that's probably part of the fertility treatment.
Yeah, I think so. So we'll just move on with that innuendo there. But so this and the amount of details in here, David, if you were one of these MSPs they're talking about, would you want to be either one?
No, I mean, even the ones that's listed as just doing business with them, I'm like, I don't want to be listed in it at all, because then you're just hoping people actually read it to understand that you're not negatively wrapped up in this.
Yeah.
But no.
So they name names of the businesses, thankfully not the people. Bless their hearts. So this is how far back the details go. On January 31st, 2007, the Diamond, which is the name of the facility, they entered an, quote, on-site gold support managed services agreement with Info Access Technologies, Inc.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, we know from being in the business, the on-site gold support, that 2007, this was what everybody was doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. You know, you have the different levels, and in
Bronze,
2007,
silver, gold.
yeah. Now, and then they have platinum and titanium and all this other stuff now, but
or diamond.
a diamond. But there you got another one. Okay. So, but point out here, this is prior to high tech.
Yes.
So everything was different then, right? So, but when high tech came out, this relationship between the two, they should have formalized some things and changed some things.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of doing that, in or around March 2014, so 7 years later, they changed.
After Omnibus was released, too, by the way.
When you should have buckled down more,
mm-hmm.
They changed their agreement with Info Access from the on-site gold support to their Essentials Plus agreement.
Sounds like a downgrade to me.
Well, you know, they changed the names of their stuff. Great. But Essentials, I'm doing the bare minimum. That's what Essentials says to me. Does that say that to you? Uh-huh.
No, they're doing the bare minimums plus agreement.
Plus a little bit. That's right. So now, and this is a key piece, because according to the Attorney General's office statement here, that agreement did not include all the same services as the on-site gold support agreement.
Mm-hmm.
But they have to include that Diamond alleges there was no reduction in services between the two other than the amount of time included in the plan for on-site support services. So What does that say to you? Does it sound like they would be, the same at just less time?
I mean, it could be. It depends on how it's structured. And that's the thing, is everybody's, structures their plans differently.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say around this time frame, that most people weren't doing what we call the all you can eat. So they probably did have things broken out into time. It's hard to say, because shopping for MSPs, like, I don't know, man, it's tough. You can't figure out half of what people are talking about and trying to sell you. Yeah. But it could be the same level of service and just not include certain things. Like ours is basically broken out into remote support, on-site support, or both included.
Right. So we don't know is what the answer is.
Yeah.
We don't know exactly the difference there, which says to me this allegation that, it didn't have the same services, that's a really tough comparison there, apples to apples in that scenario. It
also may be an indication to MSPs that you may want to keep versions of your past plans or documentation of agreements, even once the agreements have been changed or you're no longer in agreement with somebody, because if something like this comes up later on, you may be asked about what agreement you had with a client. Even if they're a past client, you still may be asked about that. So keep the documentation.
Wow. And it's important to note that agreements were part of this problem. So, and then we get to the part where really, New Jersey AG, can you not do a better job of editing?
Yeah. We think this was just a mistake because they only did it this one time, but they spelled HIPAA.
Yeah. So they don't have a HIPAA privacy and security officer. They have a HIPAA privacy and security officer.
Yeah. HPSO.
Yeah. And they use some terms that we don't use. So it's interesting that it's kind of like, we'll use this one. So they call the HIPAA privacy and security officer the HPSO. This means we could start coming up with things. Okay, so, but we can't play with any other acronyms until we come up with something for our conference. Anyway, so they utilized RDP service with a VPN to access the network. That's pretty common setup, right? And this is where Bermuda comes into play, because the VPN was blocked from the Bermuda office.
Okay.
Now, there's a lot of ways to get around this. And we are talking about 2016. So this all started in the breach case in August 2016. And at that point, we'll have to go back and look. We were doing episodes at some point saying, RDP, fix it. This is a huge problem. And during that time, Microsoft had repeated security updates. There were all these things going on with RDP. And their alternative method that Info Access provided to solve this VPN problem was they just opened up the RDP.
That is not good.
No 2FA, no two-factor authentication. They just opened it up and said, come on in. Now, it doesn't...
You know why I'm laughing.
I do. I think it's episode 3. But but as far as, I mean, there are other ways to handle this. And it's like they didn't do any other security. It's, is it just me, or is it like all they did was say, here you go, we'll just open this up to get around it, and boom.
Yeah. I mean, make it work.
Oh, yeah, that's kind of that attitude, isn't it? Make it work attitude.
Just make it work. It's like I say, well, 2 things. One, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And number 2, there are a lot of people that can make it work, but it's not proper.
Right. That's the difference between IT and security. Because that was just IT solution.
Correct.
Not security solution.
No.
And we know this because it didn't take long. I'm sure it didn't take long once that thing was opened up. Because from August 28th, 2016 through January 14th, 2017, so 5 months, the Office workstation, and it was connected just to the HIPAA privacy and security workstation. The officer's workstation, the HIPSO, was remotely accessed by undetected intruders a significant number of times from a foreign IP address. Unauthorized access was first discovered January 14th, 2017, when Info Access confirmed that an unauthorized user remotely accessed the Melbourne office workstation. Okay. So we don't know how they discovered it other than they confirmed it.
Right.
Now, is that, there's a lot of variables there. Anyway, then here's one I got a problem with. During the period of unauthorized access, the data on the compromised workstation was not encrypted. Okay. As a result, that phrase, you can make that first statement. But when you add, as a result, the intruder had the ability to access EPHI stored on the workstation, yada, yada, yada. No. Not encrypting the workstation did not necessarily create the result of the person having access.
Right. Yeah. I mean, encryption or not, if they're using the computer, it's in an unencrypted state anyway.
Thank you.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to me, I'm like, okay, what else?
I mean, it may not have been encrypted, but I don't think whoever wrote this understands encryption, because they would know that it doesn't matter.
It matters not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure, it wasn't encrypted, but it doesn't matter.
They were able to access things because they were able to access the computer. Right? They logged into the computer. That allowed them to access things, encryption or not, irrelevant. They point out at least one intruder also accessed their third-party server, which housed the EMR with a password-protected Microsoft SQL database. So apparently they didn't try to brute force their way into the database, or if they did, they never got in. But as we have often mentioned, it's not just the EMR you got to worry about.
Mm-hmm.
Because they got into a boatload of stuff. Unprotected documents, which included patient lab results, ultrasound images and reports, clinical notes, and post-operative notes. But here's the thing. Back to, we'll just open up RDP. If I'm going to open up RDP that's been through a VPN access, should I not worry about some other security like passwords?
Yeah, you'd think so.
Mm-hmm. So would you as an MSP not say, hey, if we're going to take this off, you're going to have to up your game on passwords?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, even back then.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the
Be
thing,
prudent
right?
thing. Yeah.
So they had weak passwords, weak security settings for failed login attempts and password expiration. So basically, you could, fail to log in apparently 100 times. So that allowed the brute force to take place, and they backdoored it. And
we don't know if this is necessarily the MSP being lazy or not following best practices, or if it's the client saying,
we don't care.
Remove this security. This is inconvenient. Get rid of it. I don't know.
We don't know. What I'm saying is, as you mentioned before, they should have that documented.
Yes, you better be documenting
it. And this is why. This is why we tell people to document. Right here. Then they go into another ding-em because the server isn't encrypted. Again, irrelevant to this breach. And they talk about, well, there were 11,000 New Jersey residents. There were other residents from New York. The big thing is New Jersey residents is all that applies here. Mm-hmm. And then they say they were unable to determine how the intruders gained access to the network. I'm sorry. Really?
We didn't pay somebody that had the capability to discover how they got into the network.
We just know we did this and then they got in. So first of all, that's what it is.
Yeah.
And anyway, as we go, so they find this in January, but they don't notify the state police and patients until April. TikTok.
Yeah.
Problem there. Then we've got that they did not, and this was to me a big zinger. They did not have business associate agreements in place or documentation of a business associate agreement being in place prior to sharing PHI with Berkshire Medical Technologies, another business associate, InfoAxis, the IT company, and iGenomics. I don't know what they do. So you got 3 technology-based, it sounds like, IT company or business associates without a BAA.
Yeah, that's not good.
No. And that shows you that when HITECH came out, and we just talked about how they needed to review everything, they didn't. There's no way they did. They didn't do what they were supposed to do in 2009, 2010, 2013 was when that was like final. They didn't do it.
Yeah. And you have to slap these business associates on the wrist here, for not knowing themselves.
Yeah.
Because this is 2017, I think.
Well, they signed up originally in 2007.
Yeah.
But they changed their contract in 2014, which was well after the rules.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but they were still doing business all the way up to 2017, which by then business associates should have known.
Yeah.
I mean, especially in the IT world, because you and I were out there screaming at everybody. If you're an MSP doing business with healthcare, then you need to know that HIPAA
Yeah.
applies to you. Which
We started this podcast in May 2015.
yeah,
And one of
there
our
you go.
first ones was like Business Associates Wake Up.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Should have known.
But, and the thing here, and this is important, is that Diamond stipulates, so they basically agree that all these things stated were true. Okay. They're just like, yeah, we're not going to argue with that. All of that happened. But then the violations that come into play, according to the Attorney General, they violated the Consumer Fraud Act of New Jersey, HIPAA's security rule, HIPAA's privacy rule, when it removed administrative and technical safeguards protecting PHI and EPHI, resulting in the unauthorized access to the network left undetected for approximately 5.5 months. Okay. Yeah, that's not new, right? There's nothing about this that we would see OCR saying that. Well, not the consumer protection, but right?
Yep.
But then they go through listing all of their failures. And 19.
Mm-hmm.
Never seen them. I mean, they went like each element of the law.
Yeah.
Every single
here's your checklist.
Yeah.
Here's your checklist.
Yeah. I mean, they hit every single reference. And, minimum necessary and safeguarding passwords and, a lot of things, the contingency plan, the incident response, stuff we're used to seeing, but 19 individually listed items. Failing to assign a unique name or number for identifying and tracking user identity only makes the password thing worse.
Yeah.
So that I'm just saying. Failure to review and update policies and procedures. The fact that they mentioned that they approved policies and procedures in July 2020, we can kind of guess what that means. Failing the BAAs, that makes sense. And there, the risk analysis, all the things you're used to. And then failing to appropriately sanction its security officer for not complying with privacy and security policies.
Ooh. Hello,
Ow.
security officers.
Ow.
You just got thrown under the bus.
Uh-huh. They totally threw the privacy and security officer. Oh, I mean, just whoever this person is, you don't know enough to know whether they truly were careless or they were following instructions because it's not clear. But according to this, they should have sanctioned that individual for not following policy. Again, if you are the privacy and security officer, there's a reason that when you're told to do things that you don't think are right, we tell you to write them down. Get them in writing.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, they said they engaged in violations of the consumer fraud by misrepresenting its HIPAA practices and its security and privacy policies. That's basically saying you provide a notice of privacy practices, which you're supposed to do under HIPAA, and it says you're going to follow the security rule and the privacy rule.
And you didn't.
And you didn't do it.
You lied.
You lie. Wrong. So they point out that this constitutes separate and additionally unconscionable commercial practices because they've done this.
It is unconscionable.
Yeah. Separate and unconscionable commercial practices. Now, that whole section, Diamond disputes the allegations. So they're not going to stipulate that all that stuff is true, that they did all the, because I'm sure there's lawsuits out the wazoo. But, I mean, they're nailing them. And the $495,000, yeah, okay. That's one thing. But then they say, here's your corrective action plan. Now, right off the bat, the corrective action plan is 7 years.
Dang.
7 years.
That's insane.
I don't even, I mean, we think it's a big deal when there's a 3-year one from OCR. We're like, oh, OCR is, woo. 7 years.
Man.
Yeah.
Yeah, $495,000 is going to be a drop in the bucket.
Yeah, when you read all of this, that 7 years times what they have to pay somebody to be okay. So this corrective action plan, they call it agreed upon business practices.
Okay.
Is that it says you're going to comply with the laws, and if a security incident does not trigger a breach notification rule under HIPAA, you will create a report that includes a description of it and what your response is and all of those things, and make it available to third-party security assessors, which they get into. You're going to execute the business associate agreements, which you hadn't done. In the November 2017, they hired another IT company. So, again, here you go, David, as an MSP. Do you want to be that IT company?
No.
Pressure's on.
Yeah.
And as you said, who's going to spend the time? They see these two IT companies in consent order. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Here's the thing too: is if you're the IT company coming in and you know they've got some kind of issues they're dealing with. I mean, trust me, from a sales perspective, I'm like, heck yeah, bring us in.
Yeah.
But you better be documenting things, because if it's in response to an incident, for example, we had a person or business call us not long ago, and during the course of conversation, they're like, yeah, we had a ransomware attack back in January. And I'm like, okay, if we get hired, we're going to be doing a lot of documentation, because at some point it's probably going to come up.
Mm-hmm.
And then we need to make sure we have covered our bases.
Yeah, and we should just leave that discussion there. And moving along. So it says they're going to do that, and then it says they're going to develop an information security program. Develop, implement, and maintain a written information security program. Put it in writing.
And do it.
And actually prove you're doing it. And so a lot of this at first looks like, yeah, they're going to do it. I'm going to follow the HIPAA rules. But then they get into specifics. The first little section says, they're going to monitor and inspect. They're going to authorize and authentic. Okay, great. Yeah, this all sounds normal.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get down to other stuff. Now, they shall review not less than annually the information security program. So the program as a whole, not just the risk assessment.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get to Diamond shall appoint and maintain an employee other than Diamond's HPSO at the time of the breach. The person we've thrown under the bus, who shall serve as its HPSO and be responsible for implementing, maintaining, and monitoring the information security program within 60 days of the effective date of this thing, if not already appointed. And they will have the background and expertise with documentation of his or her background and expertise in information security appropriate to the level, size, and complexity of his or her role in implementing, maintaining, and monitoring the information security program. And they will provide a statement in writing to the division that it's designated that person, include that person's name and documentation of his or her background and expertise.
So I got a problem with this a little bit.
Me too.
Because how many people do you know that volunteer or voluntold into the security officer position, and I don't know that any of them have the experience that this is laying out.
Well, that's one of our things that we always ask is, how did your security officer get trained? And the number of times people will say the HHS Security 101 course that was published in 2005.
Yeah, but I don't know, man. It's because in some regard, the HPSO, as they've called it, I mean, they need to have some type of background in technology or be able to lean on somebody else who does.
Yeah.
Heavily. Because, I mean, this is, for me, I had to read this a couple times because I was like, what?
Yeah.
It's kind of funny in one way because they're like, yeah, you got to appoint somebody, but no, not the one you had before. No.
Yeah. See, and the thing is, here is a big thing to me is, we always say you need to have whoever's in charge of privacy and security, they need to have proper training.
Right. And
that's why we do the boot camp, because we know that it's hard to find.
It's got to be that training that is above and beyond what everybody else is getting. So if it's the same, oh yeah, we go through the same training every year. No, it has to be specific to the privacy officer and security officer's role.
Yeah. If they're getting the same training as everybody else, but they're in charge of more than everybody else.
Yeah. Wrong.
Wrong. So you look at the big picture and it's like, okay, this practice is, it doesn't say how many providers, but I don't think it's huge. It looks like there's 2 on the website, and who knows how many mid-levels. But the bottom line is that's not a huge practice. And you're going to hire somebody. People hire us because they know they can't afford to hire somebody like us, which is what they're telling them to do.
Yeah. Same thing with us. I mean, you can't hire an IT person of our caliber. It's not reasonable to pay that kind of money for a full-time person. And so
in a
you
small
outsource
practice,
it.
No. Yeah.
Right. So you outsource it. You don't create an IT department. You outsource the IT department. You can't afford it.
Mm-hmm. And they make sure that they say that the HP, the HIPSO, will include regular and direct reporting to the executive staff and directors concerning the security posture, the security risk faced by the Diamond, the security implementation of their business decisions. Now, I'm a big fan of making sure that happens. But to pay somebody like me to be on staff at a small practice, that and this is why we talk about the $495,000 is just a blink on the radar as far as what this thing is going to cost. And they go through the training and all of this stuff, and then they go into the incident response plan must contain, at minimum, identify and describe the following phrases. And then they have protect, detect, and analysis, containments, notification. We have all of that, but now you got to put it exactly this way.
Mm-hmm.
And then, unlike some of the OCR ones, this one I thought was interesting. Diamond shall ensure that its information security program receives the resources and support reasonably necessary to function as intended.
I wish every state would do that.
OCR should put it in theirs, but I'm sure there's some legal reason that. Anyway, if there's a legal way to do it, they should. Because how many times did we talk? I just had a conversation with a company, not a HIPAA company, talking about the importance of having a line item, at least for technology and security.
Mm-hmm.
Lump them together if you have to. You're better off if you separate them, but at least give them their own thing where you're in your budget planning allocating money to that. I know you like that idea.
I do like that idea. I mean, it's not just because this is where I, make my money, but it's also part of doing business now.
Yeah.
So if you don't have it budgeted, I don't care if it's cybersecurity and IT support or if it's something else, but you can't, you can't run along and go, well, we'll just figure out how we're going to rob Peter to pay Paul anytime something comes up. You used to be able to do that with IT, but you can't do that anymore. I mean, we're way past that.
Yeah. So many people still have it under office supplies. You think I'm kidding, but I'm not, people.
No, you're not.
All right. So they have a whole section, specific information security requirements. They keep going. And they have identified yet again another term that we don't use. When we talk about a SOC, we know what that is, a Security Operations Center.
Mm-hmm.
But they're now calling it a CSOC, so a Cyber Security Operations Center. So I don't know if they're expecting something different, but
I was going to say,
you think of that?
That was another one. I'm like, what? Which it does, at least it says they can outsource it. Because if they
Yeah.
said they had to create their own, I'd be like, okay, they've gone way, way over their head. But yeah, I mean, even just telling them, look, you've got to get a vendor in here that's doing some SOC stuff, which I don't
you
disagree
have that,
with
essentially.
Yeah, I don't disagree with it. But again, there's so many levels to that. It's kind of difficult to figure that out from their standpoint, but it's going to be more than just we threw antivirus on some systems.
Yeah. Well, and it just keeps going. I mean, it's like they got to do the CSOC, they got to do the SIM. Oh, speaking of antivirus, they talk about that they have to have an antivirus. We both know antivirus isn't enough anymore. They should, if they're going to be that specific, they should say like EDR or something.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Some of it's like, okay, if you're bringing in a SOC, they're going to not have you doing just antivirus anyway. But
all right,
to specifically mention it and just throw in antivirus, I mean, it gets me on the soapbox, but go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, no, because we've got to speed up because urgency is building. So it gives them all the details about they have to take follow-up actions with security incident, maintain logs of system activity. But the thing is, they never mentioned in here the EHR log at all as far as monitoring it. And they're all worried about, well, they didn't get an EHR before, so we're just going to monitor everything out until then. They need to create a formalized procedure to track incident alerts on privileged user queries. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we just talked to Ray about how many times they catch stuff like that, but where is it you're going to be looking for those? And then the antivirus protection programs equivalent technology, access controls. What? I love this, that they make sure that they point out that you need to remove remote access at the time of notification of termination.
Yep.
I know that's one of your soapbox moments. I was giving you a minute.
Yeah. No, I'm trying to hold myself here.
Me too.
Squeeze.
Yeah. Add remote access multi-factor authentication. And then they ding them about the encryption and secure all of its data with encryption or reasonably industry standards. They talk about FIPS 140-2, which everybody should worry about. They should have an asset inventory. We talk to people about that all the time. Why do I have to? These things move around too much. I can't keep an inventory. Well, that is why you need an inventory, so that you know if you've lost them. The risk assessments every year, and you need to send them in for a total of 7 years.
Within 10 days of completion.
Yep. Ouch. I mean, there's a ton of stuff. The email filtering and phishing solutions, the employee training, all those details, but very specific disciplinary measures for violation up to and including termination. Well, you know what? To follow all of this, you can't just say, okay, well, we can get mad at you and decide to fire you, because we've already seen cases where employees all they say is up to and including termination. They didn't say that this was worse than that one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's why we tell people not to do that. Intrusion detection and prevention, IPS, that should be pretty straightforward. Data loss, DLP. And then again, hitting them with the business associate and saying prior to any disclosure of PHI or EPHI, they will obtain satisfactory assurances the business associate will appropriately blah, 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 and document those in a BAA. Mm-hmm. And they will obtain their information security assessment of its policies and procedures and include everything like transmission, disposal, and within 90 days of the effective date, they got to do one of these. The third-party assessor must be an organization that employs at least one individual to perform the assessment that is qualified So they want CISSP, CISA, or similar qualifications and have at least 5 years of experience evaluating the effectiveness. I mean, it just goes on and on and on of requirements that are just unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, it's giving you specific details. So if you want to build a program, why don't you pull this and just do it from there? But, you know, the reports have to come into the attorney general and, you know, the payment. And if you screw up, all bets are off. And I mean, this thing is crazy with details. So we've hit some of the high points. But like I said, if you go read it yourself, you're probably going to go, why didn't they say that? Because we were in a hurry.
Yeah. We'll be here for another hour going through this thing because there's a lot more in there. But we've definitely hit all the highlights. So go to our website, check it out, get the show notes, check this over. I mean, there's a lot to it. And, you know, for those people that are asking questions like, hey, I'm the security officer and I want to know how I can get my organization to spend more money and take this stuff seriously. Here you go. Slide this under the door.
But make sure you use the consent order because the article doesn't show the 19 violations.
Right.
Or the details, you know, it shows some, but not to that level. Not at all.
Yep. There you go. Because everybody's got to see it in writing. So here you go.
Yep. Yep. You want proof. And if you're an MSP, heads up, we have not been making stuff up.
No, not only that, but we don't know if there will be more fallout against the MSP over this as well.
And will it make the same news? I don't know.
Yeah, that's true. It may happen and we not even hear about it. But rest assured, it's not good. Even if nothing else comes of this, the brand damage alone could be significant.
Yeah, so they want to keep it quiet.
Yes. But so, here they are.
Here they are. You're welcome.
We're sorry. You got caught up in it. But
it's not like you're being singled out.
Yeah. If you want to get on the podcast and tell your side of the story, reach out.
Yeah, we'd love to hear more stuff. But at any rate, David, I've got to go.
That is our show. Okay. That is our show for today, folks. Thanks for listening. Be sure to follow us and share us out on your favorite social media and rate us in the podcasting app. Remember, for Donna and myself, HIPAA is not about compliance. It's about patient care.
You've been listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, hosted by Donna Grindle and David Sims. The show created to help you with HIPAA. For more information or to ask us a question, visit our website at helpmewithhipaa.com. Neither Donna Grindle or David Sims are attorneys, and they do not offer binding legal advice concerning regulatory compliance. The information in this podcast should not be relied upon or construed as legal advice in any way. Consult your attorney for legal advice concerning compliance with HIPAA regulations.